Oh my God, it's so beautiful having you here.
Thank you.
And I remember when I first saw you speaking at an event, I just felt
Oh,
like I want to know more,
oh, lovely.
And I know some people would say things just like having a sinking fan or something or stuff like that it's common knowledge. It wasn't to me. It was the first time I heard about it.
I realized it wasn't common knowledge to a lot of people on
Yeah.
that day. Yes.
So I just thought that, okay, it's something that I would like our audience to know.
Yes.
And just putting myself in the shoes of a lot of people
Okay.
who may be maybe early 20s or just in their 20s and 30s,
Yes.
struggling financially, no financial education or literacy.
Yeah.
Imagine someone like me who has a 9 to 5
Okay.
and doesn't have any idea what to do with my finances. My money's in the current account. I have no idea what to do. All of the financial information I see is just overwhelming.
Yes.
Where do I start?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. So, I just have a current account. I'm seeing lots of financial jargon being thrown at me on a daily basis. I'm young. I want to spend my money, but I don't. But I also want to save. I don't know where to start. Right. I would say first thing is to assess your financial situation, which is what we've just said. You've defined what the problem is. That's always the best starting point. Defining and saying, this is my issue. How do I go about fixing it? My first port of call is you can't begin to save more if you don't even know what your financial status is, what your current financial situation is. So that's saying, how much am I spending on rent? How much am I spending on bills? Do I have lots of, recurring expenses? Sometimes some people realize that they're subscribed to so many things. My younger sister the other day was telling me she just realized that she has so many ridiculous subscriptions that she didn't know she was actually subscribed to, that was just taking money out of her account at the beginning of the month and realizing that I have no money left. So I think the first thing is to assess what the situation is. And there's so many budgeting apps. So that this now leads to budgeting, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what actually gives you a clear picture of where you're starting from.
Yeah.
You can't start without a plan. You can't try to build something without a plan.
Yeah. I am just realizing that you're giving us the solutions. And in as much as I want us to go directly to the solutions, I think your background
Yes.
would have exposed you to a lot of people and how they deal with their finances. So maybe it would really help us to start with the common problems you see when it comes to people and their finances. I think let's just make it would flow better that way.
Yes,
So
yes.
what are some of the common challenges you see? And then we'll talk about the solutions in that way. Then it's just very
I think that's
easy.
definitely better.
Yeah.
First common challenge, people do not budget. That just ties back straight into the not understanding your financial situation. It's like saying, oh, I love pasta. It's like saying, I want to make pasta, but I want to just do it, my eyes closed. I'm just going to buy anything and just put it together. It's not going to work because you're doing that. You're doing it very haphazardly. Same thing with your finances. If you just think, oh, I have a mental note of how much I'm spending here or there, it's not going to work. And that's always the number one. For me, is the number one common money mistake that lots of people make is not budgeting. And a lot of people find budgeting so tedious and so stressful, where it doesn't have to be. It can be tedious because a lot of people are saying, oh, you have to budget, put in a spreadsheet. I do not function that way either. I don't like it. I like things automated. I don't have to think about it. It's done. So one of the best ways, there's so many budgeting apps out there. Some that I would name drop. One that I use personally. I never really promote anything that I do not use or I haven't tried myself. So Snoop is a really good one where if you have multiple bank accounts or even if it's just the one account, just connect it to the app. It automatically already helps you split your expenses into categories. It already tells you, okay, this is what you spent on rent. If there's certain categories that you feel should not be in a particular, bracket, you can readjust it. That's automatically done for you. So instead of you spending, I only spend 1 hour. And the reason why I spend 1 hour is because I have multiple accounts that I have to consolidate or sort out on a monthly basis. I spend 1 hour to just assess my finances on a monthly basis and I don't look at it again till the next month. But for someone, let's just assume the first example was just one person, a student, for instance, or just even a working professional. I have just one account. I'm just starting out. Get the Snoop app. It's free. You don't have to pay for it.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So there are others like that. Like another one is Plum, but for the categories, you might have to pay just a fee. But Snoop, you don't.
So with Snoop, it also, how is it able to predict what to put in which pots?
Just by determining, so when you pay for things, there are references, and this is just looking more into the back end of how it works now, is like you already like it can tell if something is a rent. So let's say you bought Amazon, it would just predict and say Amazon is shopping.
Okay.
If you bought something from Asda, it would say groceries.
Yeah.
So that's how it groups your that's how it categorizes your expenses. But then you can then decide, let's say you bought something and you realize that actually that's not really groceries. I bought it at Asda, but it was clothes. You can recategorize it and just choose a different bracket.
So it's able to track your bank accounts and your expenses and spending.
Everything it's able to track, including your credit. For those that have credit cards, you can consolidate everything in that one place. That takes your budgeting stress completely away by just automating it. And that way you're able to see, every month I actually spend, okay, let's use figures now.
Yeah.
Let's say your monthly income that hits your account after tax is £1,000, right? You can immediately see, oh, wow, I'm spending 700 on rent. And I'm spending 200 on groceries.
Yeah.
And then I spend £50 on, all the other miscellaneous, like, phone bill and all this. And now I have £50 left to spend in the month. Once you see that, you're able to then identify. Now you've now crossed the bridge of, now you know your financial situation. Now you're now able to take the next step of saying, okay, do I need to spend this much in this area? One thing I realized last month as well, that's why a review every month is really good. I did not realize that my internet bill had increased. It went from 27 to £40.
That's significant for...
Very significant, right? And I wouldn't have known it. I wouldn't have caught it if I did not look at my account. And immediately I spotted it, I was like, this can't be right. What's happening here? So I immediately rang up my provider. They explained why it increased. And I said, can you negotiate a deal or I'm leaving? Because this is too high. And they actually gave me a better deal for the same price.
Wow.
This is why it's really important to make sure you review. And all that came from just looking. Right now, you've taken away the stress of having to actually budget. All you need to is just looking at your situation, looking at your expenses in the different categories you've put it. And then sometimes you can also realize, so like the example I was given earlier where I'm like, why am I subscribing to this again?
Yeah.
Why am I paying for this Netflix? I realized that why is myself and my sisters, why are we all paying for Netflix? Why can't we just be on one account? It's just very simple changes. Very small, minor changes can lead to like you saving quite a significant amount of money. And that's just by budgeting, which is why it's the fundamental beginning for anything finance. You want to get your finances in order. That's the number one thing.
Can we talk about the psychological or emotional side of budgeting? Because it feels like you're restraining yourself or you're restricting yourself from enjoying the pleasures of life.
Yes. That's another thing a lot of people talk about.
And it can be depressing. And just the thought of budgeting, it just feels like I can't live the way I want to live. I can't enjoy life.
Right. Yeah. That's another thing. That's actually a very, very major worry. I call it a myth.
Oh, okay.
I would say it's a myth because it's not true. Budgeting does not restrict your life. Actually, it enhances your life because it helps you realize where you can save more money for that discretionary spending you want. It goes back to the example of what I just said, right? Now you've realized that instead of me paying for Netflix, my sister is paying for Netflix. My brother is paying for Netflix. We can all get on one account. I save that extra money to buy that extra burger I want to buy.
Oh,
it's really just changing your mindset about it. It's very much a psychological thing, right? It's just changing how you think about it. I think about it as like, okay, that extra subscription, that's an extra for me. I love coffee. That's an extra coffee I can get to buy.
I like that you mentioned you love coffee because I've seen some kind of content with people talking about cutting out little things like coffee.
Ah,
Would that really
yes.
save you money?
Yes, I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to. So I think it's two ways, right? When you're first starting off, that's why it's important to understand your situation first. And then cutting off that one coffee here or there, it would help, but it's not really going to dramatically change your life. What I call it is, instead of just spending money, I call it value-based spending. Value-based spending to me is, am I spending, when I want to buy anything at all, even if it's just coffee, is this something that's going to improve the quality of my life? Is this something that's going to improve that's going to add to me than just like, something small? Is it improving my education, my experiences? Because sometimes some people want to go to very affluent restaurants compared to just McDonald's.
Yeah.
But it's thinking, what is your why? Why are you doing it? That's what I call value-based spending. But as you said, but in the beginning, you really need to first assess your financial situation and then decide, okay, where can I cut back to put in the things that's actually going to add value to me?
Okay.
If that coffee is, for me, coffee gets me going, it gets me. And this is where I budget for it. I don't just spend. I don't just say, oh yeah, because I love it, I'm just going to spend on it. Because I like this, I'm just going to spend on it. No. You can't do that. It's budgeting for it. And then you realize that, okay, if that thing is valuable, it's value-based, you would find something else that you spend money on that's not value-based that you can cut out.
So budgeting is the first thing. Yeah.
Budgeting
First
is
of
number
all,
one.
you mentioned that understand your situation.
Yes.
And then budget.
And then budget, yes.
And make sure that it's automated.
Automation will save you the headache completely, because it automatically, even if you don't review it for like 2 months, it reviews it for you, and Snoop sends you notification. So if, for instance, you've overspent on one category, because once it categorizes, and then it asks you to set a number. So let's say, like I said, your rent and your regular expenses would be the same. Like it wouldn't change usually, at least for the duration of a year. So like if you're paying a mortgage or something, it won't change for a while. Those things are kind of fixed. Your fixed expenses, right? Yeah. You can literally set, this is the budget for it. Once that is done, if anything changes, so I also got the notification about my internet bill increasing. I just got a notification from Snoop. I was like, this has increased. And I'm like, why?
Did?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
And before, that's what prompted me to go review.
Now I need to go download Snoop. Because I did put it down when I went to that event where, so to speak, I wrote it somewhere. I said I was going to download. I've never done it. I'm like, okay, I need to do this. And now I would actually
It's the easiest thing. 5 minutes of your time, I promise. And not forgetting other apps that do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think Monzo now. So for those that have a Monzo account, Monzo has now clued in. They've now they've realized what they were missing, because they have the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And now they've now included that you can add other accounts as well. Because for me, Monzo is absolutely great. They already automatically do that, and they're they have an amazing user experience as well. I find it very easy to use when it comes to categorizing as well. But then I had several accounts, so I couldn't consolidate everything. And for me, I want everything in one place. I can see everything. I can budget, because let's say I use this card for this now, I use this card tomorrow, I use that card tomorrow. I can't really budget if everything is all over the place.
Yes.
But when I bring it all together, I can see the full picture of what I'm spending, including my credit, which is a big part that a lot of people forget. You can see what you're spending on your credit card, what you've paid off on your credit card. Yeah. If your interest rate has increased, a lot of people don't even know that interest has increased on their credit sometimes. And that takes more money from you. So budgeting isn't taking money from you. It's helping you to save more money.
What if I just want to use a pen and paper?
You can also use a pen and paper, which is why they're like Excel-based spreadsheets. I'll be releasing one, because I know there's still some people that really like to use a pen and paper. Yeah. I started with the pen and paper because I always needed to budget something before these apps came along. So I have one that I use, and I'll be putting it out in the new year. December is over. I want to enjoy my holiday. But I would put it out in the new year for anyone who wants to purchase it. It's not going to be anything expensive, but it just really breaks down your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, I'll be included in the sinking fund because I think it's a game changer. Things you can budget under your sinking fund, examples of sinking funds, as well as like what you should do for savings and investment. And mine definitely looks into like what kinds of savings. Did several categories of savings and several categories of investment, and what the reasons for it. The small term, is it the goal, the timeline, the duration. So is it a short term, long term, or are you looking at, is it for retirement? Because that would determine what actually goes into it and how much you allocate to it.
I mean, so I know towards the end of this conversation would
Yes,
tell people where they can reach you. But
Absolutely.
just in case someone is watching right now and is curious, where can they find that spreadsheet in the future? If
first thing is going to be on my page, Hustle
Okay.
and Coin. It would be on my bio within my link tree. It's gonna be there. That's definitely the first port of call. You always
Great.
find it there.
it sounds very comprehensive. So I
It
would
would
like
be.
to see
It would be. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's so many types of. I mean, I'm not claiming to be the only one that's got this Excel spreadsheet. Tons and tons of people have free ones, but I think based on my experience and like, you know, what I'm putting together, it's going to be quite comprehensive. And it'll have a glossary as well of like the definitions of the different things. So it's something I've been working on, but it should be done in the new year.
Oh, great. So go check it out.
Definitely. Check it out.
And
Check it out.
So the first mistake people make is not budgeting.
Not budgeting. Yes.
Or not budgeting properly at all.
Exactly. Or not budgeting.
Yeah.
Thinking that you can just wing it with your finances. No, you're playing yourself. Don't do that.
What's the second thing?
Second thing, I would say biggest mistake is lifestyle inflation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say is lifestyle inflation because I'm a believer in you're not you mentioned something earlier where you said, oh, people said just cut this.
Yeah.
I'm a believer in earn more. Go and earn more money. But then what that brings alongside it is lifestyle inflation. And if you can't be diligent in the little, you cannot be diligent with more.
That's very deep. You know, because I've heard people say, even when it comes to running businesses and stuff, or even just managing people, I'm like, if you can't manage one or two people, you can't manage a whole
manage
corporation.
more.
Yeah.
You just can't. It's not rocket science. It's if you cannot decide and commit when your discretionary income to spend or disposable income that you have is £20 and you can't commit to saving £5, when you have 100, you would not save that £5 still.
You know what? I read The Richest Man in Babylon.
It's a beautiful book.
Right. And one of the key nuggets, main thing actually that I learned from that book is that no matter how much you earn, you can save.
Yes, absolutely.
Because someone is probably watching us and is thinking, oh, I don't make enough money.
Yeah.
I can hardly get by.
That's another
How can
myth.
I put some money aside?
That's another myth, another very, very big myth that, you know, people believe that, oh, life is dealing with me. And that's not to take away from anyone's experiences or what's going on at all. Absolutely not. But life is dealing with everyone. Life is not going to stop dealing with everyone.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to be very real here. But then that's why it's so important to save. And that will bring me to my next point, but I'll finish with it because the next point is not having an emergency fund after lifestyle inflation. At least something to fall back on, because imagine if you had that. It's a cushioning.
Yeah.
When life starts to deal with us, you know, be it health, be it, you know, something random. Like the other day, my furniture broke, and I'm just like, oh my days, what am I gonna do? But thankfully, I didn't have to stress too much because there's an emergency fund for it, just somewhere, and now I don't have to dip into this month's income just to cover that unexpected expense that just came out of nowhere. To go back to lifestyle inflation very quickly, if you can't be diligent and small, you can't be diligent when you have more. You absolutely can save no matter how much you earn. How, you ask me? Well, you didn't ask me, but I will tell you.
Please tell us. That's very important.
You can start with as low as £1. A lot of people think, oh, it's not going to do anything for me. The £1 is not the main goal there.
Yeah.
It's the discipline you're building.
Okay.
It's the discipline to say, I am going to commit to saving £1 per week. Let's just say per week. If you do that, £1 per week, that is over the course of a month.
Yeah.
That's £4. It seems so small. And the reason why I'm using £1 is just to say, like, worst
No
case
matter-
scenario.
yeah,
Like,
you can-
You cannot tell me you don't have £1 because you would end up going to McDonald's and buying that
Yeah.
cheeseburger. It's just a fact of life. So if you want to do, you can just decide that, you know what, I'm just going to save this £1.
Yeah.
And there's a very, very easy way to do it. Automate it. I'm an advocate for automation because when you automate it, you don't have to think about it. It's one less thing to think about, right? Automate your savings, automate your investments. But for the saving, automate it. If you decide that, you know what, all I can afford to save, regardless of my financial situation, is £5 per month, do that. I started with that as well when I was in uni.
£5 a month.
£5 a month, yes. It was just £5 a month. I worked several jobs, had to pay, my bills and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? All I can afford is £5 per month. And then I wasn't really automating it. What I did was I put it in a completely separate bank account.
Yeah.
So I don't see it, because if I see it, I'm going to
Like, you're gonna
spend it.
Yeah.
So right now, that would go to the next step of like put that money somewhere else where you can't see, where you can't touch it. Because if it's in the same account, you will spend it. It's just there's no point in us deceiving ourselves. You will spend that money.
There's some people who just have one bank account.
Yeah, I do not advise that.
Yeah.
And also having not too many bank accounts, having more bank accounts actually help with your credit score, if you didn't know that.
It does help.
It does, because what you're building is you're telling the banks that, and when you eventually want to use your credit, that you're diligent to be able to have an account and manage it and not be in overdraft or being anything. Well, that's making sure you're not in overdraft. But then it does help. It really does help with you.
Agreed. So now I need to sit properly because I feel like this is the part I'm most interested in.
Okay.
We talked about an emergency fund. And
Yes.
I did not build an emergency fund for a really, really long time. Yeah. It's probably because of my background. We don't talk a lot about money.
We don't at all.
We don't talk a lot of
at
money
all.
in African households. In fact, a lot of our parents don't even know this kind of information.
Yeah.
And it's time for us to educate ourselves.
Yes.
So if someone were to get to a point where they decide to take good care of their finances, and like, okay, I'm going to start building an emergency fund.
Yeah.
In practical sense, so how can I do that practically?
One of my favorite questions to answer. How can I build an emergency fund practically? It starts with budgeting.
Does it?
It does. Because it's when you see so there are different budgeting techniques, right? People say do the 50-30-10 rule.
Yeah.
Then there's the 40-20-20-10 rule. There's all these
I've heard
different
that.
rules. But I would say one strategy that is definitely my absolute favorite strategy, which I use and I think can work for what I call a zero-based budgeting strategy, because it really helps you to allocate. Every penny is doing something. Every penny is accounted for. Down to, you go from income minus expenses equal to zero. That's why it's called zero-based budgeting. And what that means is, and using the tools like a Snoop, which I mentioned before, there are others like Monzo now, which you can consolidate, and there's another one called Plum. What that does is now you can see what's your discretionary income? What's the extra left over after you've taken care of your fixed and your variable expenses?
Okay.
Whatever is left over, regardless of your situation, because some people's leftover could be more, others could be less. Depending on what you have left, you can now decide, okay, based on what I have left, how much per month do I want to allocate to saving?
Okay.
Is from that point, you would then take out, say, you know what, I have, the example we're using before, I have £50 as my discretionary spend. I want to allocate £10 per month to saving. And then I automate that, go to every bank account can be automated, people, every bank account. So I just go to my automated £10, be taking, immediately my income comes in, that money goes out. I don't see it. Once that's done, I know that whatever is left in my account is for me to spend or whatever. You don't think about it. That way, you're already saving for emergencies without thinking about it.
So you'd first start with an emergency fund. And when you're saving that, would you have to think about saving other kinds of, for other stuff. So I'm thinking that an emergency fund is not meant to be spent immediately.
It's not. At
How
all.
then would you advise people to save for other things?
Yes. So that brings me to one of my favorite things to talk about is sinking funds. So that's why I said in my spreadsheet that I would be the Excel budgeting tool I'll be creating. It would have its own like corner for different kinds of savings, which is the sinking fund we're just about to speak on. Is sinking fund is for recurring expenses that you need to save for. Because you mentioned because emergency fund should be for absolute emergencies. Examples of that is health reasons. Something really drastic happens that you need that money, because your savings are not meant to be spent. So your emergency fund isn't meant to be spent on anything other than like absolute emergency, like in the case of a loss of a job.
Yeah.
But your sinking fund, on the other hand, is the money you save for recurring expenses. So I think there are three main types of expenses. There's your fixed, your normal ones, your rent that you have to pay, your water bills, your electricity. Then you have your variable expenses that you have to pay on a monthly basis. These are like, you kind of have to pay your phone bill, your internet. I would say some of your subscriptions. Well, not all of them should be, but maybe some.
Yeah.
And then you now have your recurring expense. Your recurring expense are things like your birthday. Your birthday happens every year.
Yeah.
It's not gonna go anywhere. Your family's birthday, Christmas,
Your mom's birthday,
your mom's birthday,
Valentine's Day. There's that.
There's a long list of different
Mother's
things,
Day.
and
so
everyone
much.
celebrates different things, right? This is why the zero-based budgeting is so great, because it applies to anyone, any demographic, any type of individual. But then now you have these, list out what your recurring expenses are for you personally, and then decide, you know what? For me, one of my recurring expenses is concert. I absolutely love going to concerts. And I don't go every month. Like it's not so these are not expenses that happen every month, but they happen, there's significant expenses that do happen that spread across the year. So let's imagine you start saving £5 for each of this, right? Well, £5 as a bulk, but then you have this money already allocated. When that event actually comes, you don't have to dip into your income for that month for that expense. You just go straight into your sinking fund for that particular thing, and then you're not stressed. Life is great. Life is good.
So you're saying that the emergency fund is what you save for an actual emergency.
Yes.
Whereas the sinking fund,
Yes,
it's for your recurring expenses.
Absolutely.
But these are things that you would have to pay for that we normally do not think about.
Yes.
If, for example, I'm thinking about, the year is going to start, I want to, new year, new me.
New year, new me.
I'm thinking about how to deal with my money.
Yes.
I'm going to start saving for an emergency fund.
Yes.
And I've heard people say you should save for 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah. So the rule of thumb is usually 3 to 6 months worth of your entire expenses, not just your fixed and variable, including your savings and investment. People tend to forget that part.
Really?
Yes. Because it's the idea of an emergency fund is, if I lose, let's say your income, your source of income, if I lose this, can I still cover every aspect of my life?
Okay.
Including your savings. Can I still function? And then the idea is 3 to 6 months worth of that money gives you time. It's a cushioning for you to then figure out your life, or even to just rest whilst you figure out your life and what the next step would be.
And in terms of where to keep the emergency fund, I've been in a bit of a conundrum. Like I said, I'm a bit new to this. I wouldn't say this game, but it's not a game. I feel like this arena of money and finances. So I'm still learning the process. I have been thinking about where exactly to keep my emergency fund, and I've read about various places that you can keep it. But for someone who really talks about this and does this and teaches people how to do it, what would you recommend?
High yield savings accounts.
Okay.
So the idea is you're not touching your emergency fund at all for an extended period of time. Yeah. Hopefully, we don't pray to lose our jobs or have any health issues or any really serious things that we need that money for, at least. So you want to put it in an account that has a good enough interest so that money doubles. The idea is make your money work for you. So that money is doing something. It's growing. It's not just staying at the same position.
Yeah.
That's why the first place I would advise is a high yield interest savings account. And what that basically means is an account that has a high interest. So above 3%. In the UK, above 3%. Anything less than 3% is not high yield.
Okay.
Even 3% is not as high, but with the way the Bank of England has currently dropped the rates now, so things are, becoming lower. But if it goes anything less than 3, it's not high yield anymore. Another account, well, this I would advise for people that are a little bit more risque, not with their finances, is I would advise money market funds.
Okay,
so money market funds is a type of investment that's quite stable. So they invest in very, very stable things, and it doesn't grow exponentially like when you invest in stocks or you invest in ETFs or commodities.
Yeah.
It just grows very steadily. It's like bonds basically. So if you invest in this, your money is still doubling.
Do you have easy access to the money in case of an emergency?
It depends on the that's a very, very important point you just mentioned. Your emergency fund needs to be accessible for when you have an emergency. And to answer that question, it depends on the platform you choose.
Yeah.
So I personally use Trading 212 for some of my emergency fund investments. Yes, because I do have high yield savings account, which is the one that's the first one I would jump into first if anything happens. That one I have easy access to. But then sometimes I do also advise that people should not have too much of an easy access to your emergency fund, because then I've had sessions and conversations where people have, yes, they're saving for the emergency fund, but they dip into it here and now and then. So what I would say is there are also notice accounts. They're called notice savings accounts, which actually always tend to have a high interest, which means you can only dip into that account maybe 3 times a year. And it serves the idea of emergency fund because it should only be used for absolute emergency. So you shouldn't be dipping into it more than 3 times a year.
Can you have your emergency fund spread out across different platforms? Because
Absolutely.
So for example, I was looking for a way to save my emergency fund, and I saw that, for example, Barclays, I'm just gonna make
Yes.
Barclays has this the rainy day
saver, yes.
where you get a high interest on the first £5,000.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, you don't get interest on it. Would it be advisable to save, say, your first £5,000 in the rainy days?
I that's what I did.
Okay, tell us about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, because I also bank with Barclays, and 5,000 is a lot. It's a lot of money. I would say, at least in the UK. So to even get your first 5,000, being able to save in that account, and I think it's at 5.12%, which I think is very high. That money is just going to be compounding. So it's also it's a great way to start. So finding similar accounts like that is always beautiful to be your first port of call before you go into like using investment platforms for your emergency fund. I'm not going to advise that as the first step. No.
Okay.
Start with, because it's also easy access. If you want to withdraw that money, you can always withdraw that money anytime. But I think for me, the idea is I've seen different scenarios where yes, they've taken the first step of having a separate savings account for their emergency fund, but then they spent all the money in their current account and then they go deep into the emergency fund saying, no, it's just for an emergency. So the next layer of protection would then be to limit your accessibility to that account. And that's where notice accounts come to play, or accounts that give you a limit to how frequently you can withdraw from it.
This is very good. I guess my last question would be, I know that for people who are financial gurus, this question just might sound basic, but I would like to know, when it comes to saving in a high yield savings account, you may have to pay some money. Sometimes you're required to pay £5 a month for the account, to sign up to the account. So, for example, with Barclays, I think you have to be a Blue Rewards member.
Yes.
And it means that you'd have to pay some amount of money to be...
But it cancels out. So they ask you to, I think to pay £5, but they pay you £5 back. So it kind
Every
of comes.
month?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You should check.
Okay.
Because I would never promote.
I've seen something like some people like cancel us. I didn't really understand it.
Yes. I think they were trying to get people on their Blue Rewards scheme. I think they're kind of scrapping it now as well, like the whole Blue Rewards scheme. But
all right.
But I think the only reason I went for it was because it was free. At least free in my mind, because they tell you they charge you £5, but they pay you £5 back. So it kind of cancels out. But there's so many free high yield savings accounts out there. So just start with the free ones.
And then you can save some in your high yield savings account. You can also have a notice account.
The notice accounts are majorly for people who are not diligent enough to not dip into their emergency fund, like dip into your easy access high yield. Yes, that's why I suggested that, because they're different people. It's really just building that discipline and that diligence at the end of the day. It's really about the discipline and diligence. If you think you're fine, you're not going to touch it, then it's perfectly fine, right? And that's why out of sight is out of mind.
Yeah.
So as much as you can try to not, see it or look at it, do yourself a favor and not look at it. It's the best. It really is the best thing. And automate it, please. Automate it. It saves you the headache of thinking, because if you had to do it every month and physically move that money, there is probably a 95%, and I'm going to say 95% because everyone I have spoken to at least has said, they found it difficult, and they end up needing that money for something else. As the money hits your income, it hits your account, that same day, just set it up, stand in order, let this amount of money leave my account as well. And then you can always change it depending on whether your income, changes, because some people are on different paychecks every month. So you can increase it, you can reduce it, you can keep it the same. That's why the zero-based budgeting method, I think personally, works really well. Wow. It doesn't really restrict you. So even if it's just £1, you can do 1 month, then just do £1. If it's £5, you can do another month, then just do £5. But for automation, just decide, okay, what is the absolute minimum I can do given what I get on a regular basis or on a monthly basis, and just stick to that. Stick to it for, I promise you guys, just try it for 3 months. A minimum of 3 months, you will be shocked how much you could save, or even in 6 months. Just give yourself a test and just see how much you can possibly save. And for those that have a bit more, like we mentioned, sinking funds, you can create a sinking fund. Another account I use for sinking funds, because I like to split everything, because I don't like to stress my brain. So Chase has their savings account allows you to open up to 10 savings account within one, up to 10.
Wow.
So I have, and that's what I use for my sinking funds. Okay. I have one sinking fund for concerts. I have one sinking fund for holidays. I have one sinking fund for, house deposit. I have a sinking fund for birthdays. I have a sinking fund for Christmas, which was so good for me now because it's Christmas period and I'm not feeling like I'm being choked to death because I have to buy 1 million Christmas gifts. And what it also affords you is you can buy these things with peace of mind.
Yeah. And not, you wouldn't get to a place where you're buying it feeling like you're forced to do it. Because if you're giving a gift, it has to be very...
Yes,
you should give it knowing you really want to do it. But if it gets to a point where you squeeze in sort of the little money is trying so hard to...
I was thinking like, how would I survive in January? Yeah. I think that's definitely before I started doing sinking funds, it was pretty much that. Like everything I'm talking about, I've also experienced myself. I've also felt the pain. That's why I'm able to really, really relate and like find very, very practical solutions to people asking me these questions of like, how do I do this? How do I do this? I was like, you know what? I know your pain.
You've lived it.
I've lived it.
Yeah. and I think it brings us to a natural point. We'll really talk more about, we'll go to the next point, but I am also really keen to know, and I'm sure people would like to know where your personal journey started. If you could just tell us, you just mentioned that it's something that was inspired by your own experiences.
Yes.
And I think it's a natural point for us to have a bit of that conversation.
That's perfectly fine.
So where did it start? Because it took me all these years to start gaining an interest in finances and being intentional about that. Where and how did it start for you?
Right. So my interest in finances came, I would say it was probably in my second year of uni. So I came into the UK as pretty much everyone else. I came for uni. Things were great in my first year. Daddy was sending money regularly. I didn't have to think about nothing. Savings, nope. It wasn't in my peripheral at all. And then second year of uni for me was when the economy went absolutely crazy. Everything just went down. I'm Nigerian and the economy just went, the exchange rate basically just went really horrible, where what I could get before my pocket money was slashed into half straight away. It was so painful. And it's like, oh, I used to spend on this. Now I can afford it. So what do I do next? And then I started thinking more into how can I make more money? And for me, it was when I started working and doing lots of part-time jobs that I realized that I can't be spending my money anyhow. Now there's no direct income to supplement anything. And that's, I think, but what really did it for me was, I think Barclays, if you're watching, if you see this video, it's a great initiative. Invite me, I'll come speak there. But what happened was they were having this program for students at the time.
Okay.
It was just I studied in Manchester. I was in the city centre of Manchester, where they were inviting people to just connect and speak to their customer advisors. So just students to speak to the financial advisors, not financial advisors, sorry. Just customer advisors. Yeah, really. Yeah, it was just a casual chat. Talk about money and things like that. And if you ever see this Toma, she was absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful lady. I just picked it and I was like, let me just see what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I went in, I sat with her and we were there for 3 hours.
Wow.
And we spoke about everything. She told me all the sites to make extra money, to save extra money. A lot of the tips I'm even given now that I always give to this day came from that conversation with her, to say, you know what, you can scan all your receipts and make, X amount of money from here. Like so I think I don't know if it still works now, but I know they said, like, at the time, I think it was receipt hog or something, where every receipt you get, whether you buy some shop here, just scan it, and then at the end of the month you save some money. Or like, if I think there was another one called airtime rewards for different things. She just showed me all this different now, and then she was the one who really sowed the seed of saving and actually debunked the myth of budgeting. And like, if you do not plan for your finances, you can never save, you can never amass wealth.
Yeah.
You can't. It's just impossible.
Yeah, and this is very interesting, and I'd like us to talk about wealth building. But so at this point, we've spoken about building an emergency fund, we've spoken about sinking fund, we've spoken about budgeting.
Yes.
What's the next thing?
We've spoken about lifestyle inflation as well. Yeah. Don't spend all the money you have. Oh, I actually have, just to quickly touch on lifestyle inflation, I want to give a very, very wonderful practical tip for lifestyle inflation that I've used, because obviously we plan and we pray to get better and upskill and get more money, right? I have a strategy. I call it save more, spend some approach. Oh. And that approach basically means, once you get a pay increase or you have a little bit more money coming into your pocket, whatever that extra is, so let's say now you have an additional £1,000 coming into your pocket, now you have £2,000 a month, which is great. Yeah. That 1,000, dump 70% of that immediately into your savings account. And then the remaining 30%, spend it on whatever. Spend it on what you value, not just whatever. Remember we spoke about value-based spending? Yeah. Spend it on what you value. If it's going out for a meal with your besties and your friends, it means more, right? It means more. It adds more to your life. If it's if that 30% extra is going to be spent on experiences, do that. If it's going to be on your family or buying yourself a lovely gift, do that. Then it adds more to you, because but you've also invested in your future by putting 70% away.
You know why this makes a lot of sense to me is because then I feel it would really make people stay safe, because the reason I believe that saving is difficult for people is just that part of you denying yourself.
No, we don't want to deny ourselves.
So if you're saving and still keeping some and going out for the meal or buying that dress, whatever, value-based spending,
yes.
Then you would have the interest in saving, I guess.
You won't charge for the money, spend it. It's your money at the end of the day, but then you spend it wisely. You spend it on what adds to you, right? Yeah. And then that's why we also budget, because you can also budget. You could also budget for your enjoyment. I have a budget for my enjoyment. It's part of my zero-based budgeting. I have a budget for eating out. I have a budget for shopping. I have a budget for, clothes. I have a budget for skincare. Whatever it means to you, have a budget for it. But then you also have a budget for savings and investments. That way, every penny is accounted for. Every single penny is accounted for, and it gives you peace of mind. And it really does.
Each of these would be in a kind of savings account, so you can earn interest on them.
Absolutely, everything should be in a savings account that you can earn interest on it, because it's extra money.
Great.
It's literally like free extra money. So why not?
Okay.
Why not?
What's the next thing? I mean, one of the things I really want to talk about is investments. I don't know if that's
yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I ran an investment masterclass. I think it was in June now, something.
Yeah.
And it was really well received, and I've done quite a few of other sessions on investing. Investing is really dear to my heart. That brings me to my third, I would say, money mistake.
Okay.
So I think money mistakes I mentioned: not budgeting, lifestyle inflation.
Did you mention
emergency fund, or the last one is not investing?
Okay.
And a lot of people say, oh, I don't even have enough money for savings. Why would I even think about investing? Wrong. Investing isn't as difficult as people make it seem. I understand what's out there in the news. It can be very overwhelming.
I know I said that question was probably the last one, but I have one very last one to ask you.
Ask away.
And that is, what does kindness mean to you?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Let me think about this, because I want it to really mean something. It needs to come from within. So I would almost equate kindness to not putting someone else above yourself necessarily, but putting yourself in someone else's shoes. At least that's how I approach it. And for me, it's value. Value is everything. Can I add value to this person as I approach kindness? Because if I'm able to add value to this person, whether it be materially, with cash, or even emotionally supporting them, that's kindness. Or even, spiritually praying for them, interceding for them, that's kindness. It's almost like having that person in mind and adding value to them. So I think that's probably the way I would explain, or the way I approach kindness.
That is beautiful, because you've been immensely kind to ask us of all of the value you've shared with us.
Thank you.